Okay, no, here's my thought. So we've talked about like a school, basically.
Yeah.
You know, like different, maybe homeschool, maybe just an adult school, but where it has like specific classes and stuff that we at least think are way more practical than just your general stuff that you learn in like high school.
Right.
But so what you're talking about, to have your homeschooled kids, you basically teach them business stuff and you come up with your own little things. Mm-hmm. It would not be that hard to like repackage the things you do, like basically make your own syllabus, record some videos, like make plans of like what the students do.
Yeah.
And then almost like sell that as a
curriculum
add-on to people who are homeschooled. So like anyone who's homeschooled could like buy the course to teach their kids, and it's so set up that they could easily get it approved as a class through their like homeschool program.
Right. Well, like that's what Ramsey has that. Not a business one,
right,
but actually they do. They have an entrepreneur,
and,
kid entrepreneur, starter kit.
Well, but I would compete, you know?
No, I think it's...
because that's almost like way more, well, it's obviously way more attainable than starting a whole school.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good almost first step into that world because like you said, you're planning on teaching your kids that anyway.
Yeah.
So as you're figuring it out for your own kids, you can kind of like really detail stuff down, really make a course out of it and just make it a package thing. And it's basically like selling an online, you know, one of those video courses, whatever.
Yeah, no, and I don't even know if you need to get it certified. I think you could sell it as just like...
No, I'm saying it doesn't have to be certified, but it's so well put together and all there that anyone in a different state could purchase it and go to their homeschool and say, hey, this is what I'm using. Can this get approved or as a credit or whatever?
Right.
Because I guarantee if it's that well put together, they'd be like, oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's interesting because like the thing that I see is it's like it wouldn't be all that hard. Like I'm thinking myself like, how would you teach someone if you're doing an hour a day, let's say? Did you not hit record? You did? Okay, good. Like, how would you teach someone if you're doing an hour a day? And I can think, like, let's say, like, if I had a middle schooler that when he's in middle school or she's in middle school, it's like, I would do some, like, lessons on marketing. Like, and explain, like, how do you market? What's way to market? And literally, rather than teach them, it's more just ask. Like, and that's a part of the class is it's not a class about, you're not going to have the answers for everything. So you ask them, you say, I want you to come back at the end of the week. You need to spend an hour each day. And at the end of the week, you need to come back with a marketing strategy. And they're going to be like, well, what's a marketing strategy? And it's like, Google it. Learn how to market. Like, there's so much free information out there. You need to figure it out. And, like, you can have little lessons that help with it.
Tell me tomorrow.
Yeah, tell me tomorrow what you're thinking would be a good marketing strategy. And then at the end of the week, I do, like, a little thing and say, hey, you know, that's a good idea. Now go test it and see if it works. And then when it doesn't work, or if it does work, then it's great. And then you
overview like what worked, what didn't.
Yeah, and then you say like, "Hey, this worked well for you. Maybe you should do this," rather than actually tell them how to do it. Because that's I think the biggest thing is like myself. I'd want to tell them, "Oh, you should do this. Go to door to door, do this." But it's like actually, they probably have
they might come
up with better ways, and that's kind of the point of it. It's like you need to figure it out. So you need to explain to me why you're doing this. But it's more of there's no right or wrong answer, but you need to be able to explain why you're doing that.
Yeah.
That's kind of the general scheme of it is to teach them to learn how to actually answer the question themselves.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because for me personally, like the term marketing, I probably heard 100 times over 10 years before I really knew what it meant. Mm-hmm. Like it was always so weird to me, like the way that in school they would just like throw out the word marketing, you know, and it was always like, you know, we had a definition in the book and we like went over these different things, especially like in college, you know, that we had marketing classes and stuff, but it never just clicked until way after schooling, just like you know, the broadness and what really it all entails.
And the thing I would say is they're teaching it wrong. Yeah, because when you think of marketing, what are they talking about?
In school?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just giving you a definition that's sales, basically.
I wouldn't even say that. What they're saying is marketing is branding. That's really what they're saying. It's like when you think of marketing and what they taught you in school, it's like advertising, it's like Nike and all this kind of stuff. And it's like they're not marketing. Yeah. They're branding. They're building a brand around Nike.
Which is a part of marketing.
I know, but like when you think of actual marketing in the real world, it's like if I spend $1,000 in Facebook ads, I'm going to make X amount in return from customers. Like that's
a part of marketing too.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like there's difference of like something in the short term that's going to make you money and something that's long-term business building that has no clear end of ROI. Like you don't really know how much it
Yeah, but that's my point is marketing entails so much. And it's not a, 10-word definition. Mm-hmm. Or it really can't be summed up in a 10-word definition very well.
Yeah.
In my opinion. And yeah, you're not really going to learn it unless you just like go do stuff because there's so many different things that can be considered marketing.
What's interesting too is it's like there's so many. I'm just thinking back to when I was a kid. Like the raffle tickets that we had to sell are a prime example of something that has stuck with me forever. Like when we'd have to go sell them door to door. Looking back on it, my mom and dad didn't drive us. They literally kicked us out of the house and they said, "Go sell raffle tickets tonight," and we had to ride our bikes from door to door without our parents and knock on a bunch of random people's houses, like hundreds of people's houses. We just knocked on their door and sold raffle tickets by ourselves. And it's like, thinking back to that now, it's like, ooh, do I really want my kids...
It's a little different these days, too.
...going around and doing that? But, like, I was in middle school and we were doing that, and it's like nothing really bad happened, and it's like, you probably still could do that. And honestly, that's probably a really good thing as a kid to get that independence of like, oh, I can go do this.
I will say it's different these days. Mostly in other, not so different around here.
In Alaska, I don't think
very different in other.
Yeah, it depends on where you're at for sure. But even then, it's like, even if you were in like a sketchy part of town or whatever, most sketchy people don't mess with kids. It's usually adults that they're messing with. You know what I mean? To an extent.
But how much are you going to push the odds,
I know, but also then you got to think of the other side effect of it is like if you don't allow your kids to do that kind of stuff, then you are leaving them exposed to the fact that they never got to experience that independence of doing stuff on their own. So it's like, how much do you balance?
Which, like I said, I get maybe in certain areas, but there's definitely some areas where you just that's not a chance you take because it's
and since it would be like a class, I would want to structure it more of like I could see where Allie and the kids load up in the car and she says, okay, you get this door, the next person gets this door, and then they trade off and then they get to say, oh, it was so scary, I had to go do this, hype themselves up and stuff like that. But like you could do it in a more supervised manner that's safer. But
that's definitely you can figure that out. And there's ways to do that too, because you can, especially in any location, do it at a business, if the kid walks into a business and sells to even just the employees or, talking to the employees, that type of thing. So. But anyway, my point is just that type of thing, it's so like, I mean, it makes so much sense to us, you and I, to teach to kids, regardless of whether it's part of schooling or not. So, but it also just seems like such an easy thing to kind of like compile and put together and kind of just write out a syllabus almost and sell it.
Well, and my thought too is I think it'd be cool, like you could do it even more extreme, like as they get older, like you could do things like, hey, you need to write a part of the project could be like, hey, at the end of this quarter, you need a 40-page business plan.
Right.
And you need to try to get investors, like literally like on a small scale, like let's say say you are flipping a car or whatever at 16. It's like, you're going to need $3,000 and you only have $1,000. How are you going to get the rest of the money? And then give them options and say, you could crowdsource money. So like you're going to go to friends and family and you're going to do this proposal and you need to try to raise money. Like stuff like that. It's so harmless that most people in my family would be like, oh yeah, I'll give you $500. And then you say, now you have to pay them in return. Like you have to give them a return.
Figure those types of things out and teach that when you borrow money, the goal is to take the profits and disperse that, and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so many aspects that I could see.
So many different options too. They could also just start smaller to make the money to get to that big thing.
Well, and that's I think the point about it is it's like you could try to explain that in lessons of like, hey, you can just take your time and now it's completely up to you. And then I could see where like I get to invest in them, but then I invest in them and I say, hey, you have to do it this way. I'm an investor. And then, like there's actual actions, like consequences to what they decide. And it's like in the curriculum of like,
that's true.
Like this investor decided he wants to back out. You now owe him $4,000 immediately or whatever. And you got to like figure it out in those scenarios. And I think there's a way you could do it where you have like the real world, what they're doing in the real world, but then also like the fake practice kind of stuff where it's like a structured type of gain, basically, of like, you know, you invested this amount of money and the returns were this, and now you draw a card and it's like random investor decided to pull out kind of deal, you know?
Yeah,
like
true.
fun ways to
right.
conceptualize it.
You definitely make it like different for different ages and stuff.
Yeah.
Which it's kind of easy generally to be like, you know, this course is for really young, this course is for like maybe middle school, this course for like older and can drive. But it would be a little hard to make it like so the one kid could do it every single year and it'd be different.
But I think you need to
you just change
start them and you just get it more and more intense.
But I think you could change little things that, you know, because essentially you could even do the exact same class every year and learn a ton. Right. So, but you can maybe make it a little more complex every year. And maybe this year you focus more on the accounting side of things. This year you focus more on the marketing side of things.
Right.
This year you focus more on just sales or whatever.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and then the other thing too is like at younger ages, it's so easy to do. Like when I was in elementary school, I mean, I was third grade and stuff. My mom and dad never suggested this ever.
Yeah.
But we would do lemonade stands all the time.
Right.
There was never a suggestion of my parents. We just did them all the time.
Right. It was just a way to make money.
And we would make a lot of money. Like, people would drive by and they'd give us 20s all the time. And it was like, on any given weekend, we could make like $100 each. And there's three of us.
Me and my friend had a lemonade stand in high school.
Yeah, exactly.
We made like $300.
Right. But so my point is, it's like, that's a perfect learning tool of like, hey, do a lemonade stand here. Now, we're going to go to the city, get a city permit, and you're going to get a lemonade stand down at Wonderland Park.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, go through show them, like, hey, you could do it here, or you could get this location and help them along the way, and then show, like, they made $1,000 today
and
because they're in the killer location.
Learn how to call and get the permit and all that type
right.
of stuff.
That kind of thing would be so valuable, like, learning like that. And it doesn't just apply to business. I mean, there's so many instances of, like, there's so many bureaucracy systems that you have to learn how to handle that would help you teach, like, how to work with the DMV, how to work with this, how to do your taxes.
Taxes
like,
is a huge one.
Like, that's a huge deal of, like, showing how to handle it appropriately to where it's just you're that far much further ahead, which I think would be cool. So I'm kind of excited of, like, that's really going to be a fun part of like homeschooling is being able to like come up with that on I think I'll do it like on the fly, but also like maybe a year in advance kind of idea of like
plan stuff out a little bit.
Yeah, but just like, you know, figure it out. I see where you could do it like 3 days a week or a certain amount of days a week. They need to spend at least an hour working on it, and it's like in certain days a week you do different activities. Like, but there's definitely aspects of like you have to put yourself out there. Right. Like no one's gonna just come do business with you, and that's so beneficial.
And you think about like, especially nowadays, one of the biggest parts of business, literally any type of business, is an online presence.
Yes.
So even if it's a brick and mortar local business, being online is still a huge part of it. So making a website maybe, or at least not necessarily they have to be able to make a perfect website, but learning the process of that, you know, learning, how much does it cost to hire someone, how do you make it yourself, those types of things. And, you know, the Twitter, Facebook, all those types of things, YouTube, like those are all valuable lessons.
Even if you never use
for
them.
business or not, you learn so much in doing those things. You learn a ton that can just be useful in life.
Well, and then the thing that I see is like, there's like a 98% chance that your kid is not going to be into running a business at all, because the vast majority of people do not want to do it. It's not worth it in the long run. But I think it's invaluable to learn what actually takes to run a business, because it allows you to get better jobs. Because if you can show a business, like if you understand like, hey, in order for me to get paid more, I need to make them more money. Right. And so it's like,
there's so many people that say, hey, I need a raise, just because they think they need a raise, but they don't know the ins and outs of, well, this business is not, like, you're not putting out enough product, you know, like you're not making enough happen to make a raise, you know, to warrant getting a raise. So it's like, what can you do to make the business more money that now in turn you deserve a raise? Yeah,
and so like that kind of stuff, I think you could teach along the way. If like it's invaluable to see that.
So just that's what I mean is the knowledge of it, of how it all works, is useful, whether you end up doing something with it later in life or not.
I think it's an interesting kind of fun thing. Like, And I think it would be fun too, like if Brandy's got a kid that's close to the same age as ours. Wanda's only a year older than ours, and like you have a kid, and that's cool because it's like, I could see growing up, like when Brandy's homeschooling all of her kids and stuff. So as like the nephews, nieces, and stuff, maybe they decide that they want to kind of like do it as a co-op type lesson kind of thing. I can see where it's really beneficial to teach it in a group setting of like,
you guys can work together. And
you guys can work together or come up with ideas and like
discuss the options
or, maybe have complementary stuff, but everyone kind of has a part. And I think it's kind of interesting to see how it would unfold. Like my sister, she does this like co-op thing at their church. Really cool. I am surprised their church has it. Like she's telling me all about it, where they literally have people from the church that are good at certain things come in and teach classes. So like
cool.
People that are good at sewing, they come in and they teach a sewing class.
That's awesome.
And people that are good at like carpentry come in and teach a woodworking class. And like it's just a bunch of these people that go to the church that are really good at certain things. And all the church, there's like tons of kids and they're all homeschooled. Yeah. And so like all the homeschool kids go there every Friday for 4 hours and they just go do classes at the church. And like I see that as being a very valuable like kind of setup of like, if I'm going to be homeschooled, like I want there to be like more homeschooling families that we can kind of like interact with and kind of do joint classes.
Don't just do boring stuff in a book at home by yourself all day.
But like there's certain things that are just simple, like English, math, and science is really easy to just like knock those out. Like people overestimate how hard it is to get those done, but like
because when you go to school you're taught that that's the majority of your day,
but it makes learning
2 hours
so
per
boring.
subject, and
it's like it's not that hard to get the basics of math, science, and
to learn
English.
what you need to know is different than like, I don't know, I think if you learn the basics of those things and then you do these other classes like woodworking or business or accounting, or those type of practical things, then you can apply the basic math and writing that you learned, and then go further in something specific with a direct reason for doing it, instead of just like, here's really complicated math for no reason.
Well, the prime example would be like writing. You need to write copy for an email. You need to write copy for a business plan. You need to write copy
learning
for
the basics of grammar and stuff is great.
Math.
But way better to apply it to something specific
than
kind of just
fun.
Take a writing class.
And then you need to now do the accounting, do the taxes, balance your books, all that kind of stuff. There's your math. And then there's the science aspect of it, of like, depending on what you're doing, like you need to learn about the chemicals, you need to learn about this, like that. I mean, there's so many instances of stuff that you can apply.
Yeah, totally.
It's just kind of cool. I don't know. It's a cool idea to me. I've been thinking about it. It's like, I'm really excited for that when that happens. Like,
you're getting old.
It's gonna be fun to do that.
Yeah.